You've devoted a great deal of your time to what we might call physical work. Martial arts, clearly, but you didn't restrict yourself to mastering the art of fighting. You also made other huge contributions. Discovering an effortlessly effective body, increased feeling sensitivity, discovered so many principles of body and physics, worked with and developed what some would call energy work or use other names, studied physiology and biology extensively, mastered your own body in so many ways, and so on. Why is that? Does it have anything to do with consciousness work or increasing consciousness?
Well, that's a chunk. That's a bunch of stuff. I would have several responses, but the first one would be yes. Yes, but let me see if I can expand on that a little bit. You know, in the old days, one of my girlfriend, who was, anyway, she was in the biz, and she was talking to somebody that was in charge of the New Age magazine somewhere, and it was, it was a magazine that did new personal growth and that kind of shit. And she was talking about me, and back then I was primarily a martial artist and certainly known for being a martial artist. I did consciousness work also, but that's not what I was known for. And the guy asked, what does fighting have to do with consciousness? And I said, I want to respond to that. You say, I wasn't there. But so I wrote a whole article on what fighting has to do with consciousness. So I could make a case for it, but that's not enough. Let's lay out some of the connections here. Let's just talk about, first of all, let's look historically for a moment, See, because a lot of times we think of consciousness as a completely separate meditative practice. And what you do, you become conscious of an ethereal world or a metaphysical world or some such thing, that floats above or some, an ethereal world. And, well, one, that's not true at all. I mean, you may do that, especially if you're on drugs. But see, that's not the issue. Becoming conscious is becoming conscious of what's true. That means becoming conscious of what is a brick. What is a body? What is movement? Et cetera, et cetera, See, becoming conscious, period. You follow me here? See, not some kind of fantasy world. Not accomplishing some kind of fantasy world. All right? Now, one of the things with all this physical work that, we do, and that I encourage people to do, is it grounds your experience. It gives feedback, etc. So it not only does that, it also develops. But like I said, let's look a little historically. Buddha was a martial artist. A lot of people don't know that. They just figured all he did was sit around in a loincloth, Okay, he did that too. But when he was young, he was a prince, and it's mandatory, to be a martial artist. As a matter of fact, a neighboring king invited him to become general of his forces. And he refused. But probably the guy was trying to curry favor with his father, Gautama's father. But in any case, whatever it was, they say obviously he had developed in that domain. And of course, legend has it that he was good. But, fuck it. The legend's always going to do that. But there were other people, who developed things that had a background in martial world. Feldenkrais, clearly. Dhammo or Bodhidharma, if you recall. He was the first, Zen guy. He created Zen. It wasn't called Zen because Zen is a Japanese name, but Chan. In any case, he developed that, but we don't know Chan. We know Zen in this country. In any case, or at least it came from him. And apparently, after he got going, He was in what's called the Shaolin Temple, as a Zen temple. It was a Zen temple. And he saw his monks that were gathering to do the work, and he decided they couldn't contemplate well because they weren't physically strong enough. They weren't developed physically. So for him, in his mind, he saw some kind of connection. And so he started having them do muscle changing classics and sinew changing classics, these old things that eventually became martial arts, eventually developed into that field. He was, I'm sure, long dead when that happened. But in any case, so he wanted a relationship there. Okay. Now it's up for grabs, but I'm just saying, And then if you think about, say, Vipassana, right? It's a Buddhist tradition. And what do they do? If you've ever done Vipassana, right? You concentrate on the body. It's a body all fucking day long, body, breathing, shit like that. And that's all physical, you understand? And then trying to be equanimous, while you're doing that. See, so it's obviously some big thing for your mind to do. See, but they relate to, and I'm just, my information here, I could be wrong or be inaccurate in some way. I don't really care, okay? I'm just making a case here. So, but, it's like their idea or belief is that Buddha, this is the way Buddha wanted it. He wanted people involved with their body. So, there you go. Can you become conscious, concentrate on the body? I don't know. It doesn't hurt. See? But one thing to consider is that you are a body. Get over it. I know you think you're a mind, but this is not true. But that's another workshop. In any case, there's a reason why you're so detached from your body. And I recommend you put them together again. Okay? Don't separate mind and body. See, and toward that end, it's useful to actually work with your body. To do something like yoga it means union, right? And, if it means union with the truth, I go, yeah, nah. But say if it means union of mind and body, getting your mind to be, in your body kind of thing, and good. That's good. Okay? And maybe that's what it means. I don't know. In any case, however it goes down. Now, you could work with your body in all kinds of things. I don't care. You could jog. You could do gymnastics. You could do yoga. You could do Tai Chi. Whatever. Aikido. You could sword play. You could do all kinds of things, right? Ski, whatever. And that's great. That's great. But there's beyond just working with your body and getting in your body somehow, some way. It's quite useful to have a physical education. I think it would be incredibly valuable to have a real physical education for children, but that's just me. And by that, I mean a physical education like what I do, okay? Not a physical education like doing fucking jumping jacks, and push-ups. That's not an education, all right? It doesn't take much to educate somebody how to do jumping jack, okay? You just show them to do it, you do it, okay? Or running around the rack, the field, or whatever you call that thing, the track, see? That doesn't take an education. Now, they might educate a tiny bit, but no, I'm talking about real. Like, what is balance? What is your body? What is feeling your whole body? Can you feel your whole body? Probably not. Seriously. No, it takes a lot of work. What is 3 dimensions? What does 3 dimensions have to do with your body? Well, you're 3-dimensional. Hello. What is moving from the center? What is the center of the body? Where is the center of the body? Et cetera, et cetera. What is the feeling of your body? What is the nervous system? How does the nervous system work? I say, how do you most, for example, effortlessly do anything? Say, And what is grace? These are educated things you can learn, things you work with, you can study, and it improves your body and improves your awareness of your body. And so it's kind of in that sense, your consciousness of your body, but I call that awareness, not consciousness, because I make a particular distinction there. And say, but this business of being able to ground your experience is so important. Most people live completely in their minds, and it's a shit show, okay? And they're so abstract and so dominated by emotions and ideas and imagination, they have no idea that they are. It's going from one saga and one drama to another, right? Am I hitting home here? I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Say, and unnecessary. Say, but I think maybe I haven't done research on this, but I think that maybe being able to ground your experience in physical and physical work that you can demonstrate makes a difference. You understand? You can demonstrate makes a difference. You get feedback. When you can't do something in the physical world, it's pretty clear you can't do it. When you can't do something in the conscious world, you have no fucking idea that you can't do it, because you're making it up in your mind. You understand? I mean, sometimes it's pretty clear you can't do something like turn off your internal dialogue, say, or something, and you go, oh, I can't do that. Great. Say, but a lot of kind of meditative practices and contemplative practices and stuff you don't get a lot of feedback. There's not much feedback, right? In the physical domain, there's tons of feedback. Tons of feedback. You're working on balance, you lose your balance, you go, oops, I'm not getting it yet, And when, like I've said before, so I was working with my apprentices and trying to ground them in the work. I'm going to get back to this this relationship with the physical and stuff. But anyway, I was working with them, and so I got them, and you've heard this before, I suspect. I think I did in a podcast. I said this in a podcast. Do a joining exercise. Joining exercise, right? Join the movements of somebody else and attack. Right, a buffoonish attack, it didn't really matter. But, someone attack and join it and notice, what the joining is, And they had trouble with it, right? I was incredibly clear. I'm always incredibly clear, huh? But, I was incredibly clear, and I told them what to do, and I think they understood what it is I wanted them to do, right? See, now if we were just sitting down on the cushions and I was telling them what to do and they understood what I wanted them to do, how do I know that they're doing it? How do they know they're doing it really? See, I'm sure most of the time they're not, like in the old days when I first started teaching at Unitas House, I would teach and I would talk and I'd pontificate and I go into all this stuff, this martial shit, and I was young, 20s. I was in my 20s, my early 20s. And, and I figured people got it. And then one time there was some extra pews, hanging out there. I think it was a church at one point. But anyway, on the wall, and I was, like putting my shoes on and sitting in a pew, and a group of students, about 5 or so, sat on the ground, not far from me, and they were talking about what I was just lecturing on. And I listened to them, so I'm putting on my shoes, and they didn't get it at all. And I was dumbfounded, because it was one of the first times I realized that people didn't get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could explain and talk and be clear as shit, and they all say, yes, and they really didn't get it, because they were giving their take on it, and not one of them really understood, And then I found out later that Hal and Debbie, the people who were with me for a while, would help translate me after I left. I didn't know that. He said, apparently I would leave and they would say, okay, now what he said was, and they would try to put it into normal English or something, or normalese, so that people could understand it better. And that was probably useful, but I wasn't there to see the abomination of the translation. But in any case, it's at least it's a step in the right direction, In any case, so this is a challenge, okay? A challenge. And so back to the apprentices, having them do joining, you could see that I could feel they weren't doing it. And then I would correct them, and boom, 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 we'd work on it, and they could get better and better and better. And they could start seeing that, the experience of what you said is totally different than my thought about what you said. You see? And that was incredible feedback. Useful is what I'm saying there, yeah, for the work. See, and so it is. And then when you can, so going back to my other thing, if you are able to work in a world where you get feedback like that, where you master something in your body, or you create an ability, and you got it, that you can make a shift, a real shift that makes a difference in your body, either a skill, an ability, a feeling, an awareness, whatever, a mind state that you experience makes a difference. See, in the physical domain, and the mental domain. See, then you know how to do that, and you know that you're not doing it much, much better when you're contemplating, or you're working, in a pure consciousness work, or you're listening to, say, me, or reading a book, and you get, I have to turn this into an experience, just the other night, I was contemplating, which I do a bunch at night. In any case, I was going through a bunch of stuff that was real grounded and profound. It was really, really good stuff. And I had in mind, I have to do this thing also. I'm not going to share what all that was, but I have to do this thing also. And I said, no, I cannot, because that's abstract right now. In other words, I would make up stuff, I would imagine stuff, and that's not what I want to do. I want to discover for real. I want to experience stuff. And I said, if I went there, time, space, that kind of shit. If I went there, it's not going to be experiential. And right now it's experiential. In other words, right now I'm steeped in it, and I know the difference. You following me a little bit? I don't mean to, bring you into a weird world of my contemplations, but you see, I know the difference, okay? And a lot of people do not. Seriously, I'm not kidding you. I'm pretty convinced of this, okay? A lot of people do not know the difference. Why? Because I've worked with thousands of people, and I know, hundreds of them. I went from thousands to anyway. I see people. They're all over the place. And, I can tell they don't know, especially working with them. Like I'll tell somebody, in the martial world, or the body being world, and I say, look what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. You're thinking this. And they go, what? How do you know what I'm thinking? Because of what you're doing. You see, you don't do what you're doing, act the way you act, without this kind of thinking. In other words, you have to perceive the world a certain way in order to be doing that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you follow? See, they don't know that. See, they don't know that. Anyway, so that's, I think, very important. To increase consciousness, okay? Because remember, consciousness is about, do you know what the body is? You should. I understand you do not, right? None of us knows. We do not perceive our bodies except indirectly. In other words, we feel the body, look at it, that's it. Seriously, what, Huh? Say, is that knowing the body? No. Do you know what's inside? Do you know the cells? Do you know the blood circulating, the nervous system? Are you even sensitive to your nervous system? All right? Can you feel your whole body? Again, going down that road. Probably not. See, it takes work, right? Now, you could ask then, okay, what is the body? What is the body? Well, you want to become conscious of what a body is. Well, that's physical. Hello. You want to become conscious of what an object is. That's physical. You follow here a little? See, so it's useful in any case to do the physical work. Just in life, it's useful too. Increasing balance. I'm not unique at all, but I'm 70. I'm going on 76, and I'm not in a walker. Okay. Now, that might have something to do with all the body work I've done. You know what I'm saying? Being aware of my body and balance and stuff like that. I know people in their mid 70s, 80s that are in bad shape. And, and they fall down, for Christ's sake. It's like anyway, that's not useful. Just if we're going to talk survival, okay? You're going to talk survival, survival, self, you see. It would behoove you to do it just for that reason, if nothing else, in any case. And I'm not looking, I'm not a proponent of trying to live longer. No, try to live well and then die quickly, is my view. But, I think the living longer is really out of your hands, out of our hands. I know people like to think it's not, but come on. People die, period. And everybody pretty much dies in the same kinds of times, mostly genetic as far as I can tell. But to live well demands that you are physical. I'm not kidding you. I have watched people. I came from a world of, like the Chinese, always this longevity and health and boom and Qigong and, all these guys pushing Qigong and Tai Chi and all these other magical things, and they all died. I mean, seriously, they all died just like everybody else. And at the same time, everybody else died. All right. Tai Chi masters, Aikido masters, Qigong masters, they all died, usually in their 80s, sometimes earlier. Okay. But what was true is that all the people who were physical, some of them just fighters or whatever it was, or other kind of physical things, I don't know, runners, whatever they do. But if they're physical with their life, they kept moving, they lived better longer. Okay? That's true. I've observed that many, many times. If they stop being physical, when you stop being physical, your body degrades fast. Okay? Just FYI, if you care about that kind of thing. But people in outer space, they found out pretty quick. If you're in outer space, when you come back from outer space, you can't even stand up. Just a week in outer space, and they can't stand up. Their muscles atrophy so fast. I'm just saying. Don't go into outer space. In any case, there is a relationship there. Now, as far as consciousness goes, like I say, it's the grounding your experience, learning abilities, like this whole suffering thing. Holy cow. People, I was talking to some people a little while ago, and it's like, they hang on to a world that can only produce suffering and defend that world. Okay? And I don't know, but maybe some ability in changing their minds in a physical sense would help, them be able to recognize what works, what doesn't work. I don't know. But in any case, I don't know how much. See, because I've only done what I've done, right? See, I can't tell you what other people done really or do or whatever. I see, I observe, and draw conclusions. But remember one of the original things. Like I meditate when I was a kid, spontaneously without. I didn't call it that. Yeah, but. When I was a teenager and I was studying judo, as you yourself well know, because I'm sure I mentioned it, you see, I started working with my mind to improve my judo by doing techniques in my mind so I could do them better. And that really, really worked. It did not take a long time. But one of the things I discovered early on was that I could easily work with my mind about a technique, at home, because I felt I didn't have enough training time, and then go onto the mat and go, wow, was I wrong? Oh, I forgot people have 2 legs. Oops. They have weight. Oops. I was imagining like some cartoon thing or something, you see? And no, that doesn't work. And so then I started to change to make my experience, my imagination match my experience. My concept to match my experience, so that I could reproduce the physical domain exactly as the physical domain actually works in this world. You see? And then when I did that, I could test out and work things. And again, I got feedback, no kidding, in my mind alone. I would get feedback. I would do a movement and a thing and try to do the technique and go, oops, that doesn't work. How do I know that doesn't work? See, that's interesting, isn't it? Obviously, because I did work on the mat, and I got feedback on the mat, and I could reproduce that, you see, and not have it not work. And then it wouldn't work. I would try this, I'd try that. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. I would get this. You see, if I do that, this is the result. If I do that, this is the result. If I do that, I would feel it. You understand? And again, without that physical feedback, without that kind of work, and without matching the conceptual domain to a physical domain, it wouldn't have worked at all. See, and then finally I go, boom, that's work. That would work. That works. That works. That works. See, I could do it in my mind, and I felt it working. And it was real. How do I know it's real? Because I go down to the school the next time, next day, whatever, and boom, I do it. And it worked perfectly, just like it did in my mind. See, so that is matching worlds, okay? Say mind and body, if you like. See, that's getting them together, okay? So you can work in one domain, affects the other domain, vice versa. You follow that? See, and then, of course, because of that, as I was working on that, one thing that happened that I'm sure I've said is I suddenly, in that work, in that constant attention and focus, I was also somehow contemplating without knowing it. But with that work, I suddenly grasped the whole principle of judo. I grasped exactly how it was supposed to be done and why. And did that make a difference? You betcha. That made a huge difference. Seriously, I went overnight, virtually, overnight, and it just like I was good. Overnight, I was like bam, bam, bam. I was just pumping it out, and within weeks, months, it's like I was the golden-haired boy at the dojo. I mean, it's like I was better than everybody else from that alone. You follow? And that wasn't so that was a breakthrough, an insight. But you see the relationship there. You could say that, oh, I could be a philosopher and I could sit down and I could have that some kind of breakthrough like that and go, oh, yes, and draw out equations. And then I go to the dojo and I couldn't do shit. Okay? See, you follow me. The intellect alone is not enough. Right? Without that physical feedback, I couldn't have come to the realization that made a difference. You follow? And of course, that was the physical world, but you see. And then I became a real fan of that, insight, grasping principles of, working in that way. Yeah. See, and then what I neglect, of course, is the to mention sometimes is that because the insight is so powerful, I forget to mention that again. The physical was necessary. Okay, it's like the insight didn't work all by itself. And trust me, I have tried to throw people with my mind. It didn't work. Okay, some body is usually required. Okay, I have tried to do stuff just with my mind. I mean, seriously, I've gone down that road hard, but as limitations, a man's got to know his limitations. Anyway, so I recommend that everybody does, and I think it is quite useful to work both, And the reality in which you live is physical. I mean, just pay attention. And whenever you want, like if somebody wants to do, meditation or something, you see, what do? They get into the present moment. And what is the present moment? Where is the present moment? Physical, isn't it? See? I mean, dig it. See? Your body, this moment, you see? You don't go into, like, you're trying to calm your mind, you go into some kind of ethereal fantasy world, I hope. Because, maybe if you're successful at a calm fantasy world, it'll help, see? But that's not what I would recommend, because that's imagination, see? And you have a lot of imagination, okay? Whether you're imaginative or not. Imaginative or not. You know what I'm saying? You get physical now, present, in this moment. You quiet down, and you become calm. Yeah? All right. So these things are important. I asked one of my teachers once, when I was very young, I said, how do I relax? And he said, relax your mind. And I said, well, yeah, okay, but are there some exercises I could do to relax? And he said, again, relax your mind. And since he was a man of few words, I went, oh, okay. So then I went over and sat down and tried to relax my mind. I didn't know what that meant, you see? And I realized that relaxing my mind was relaxing my body, see? Because you had to let go. I had to let go of my mind, you see, in order to relax my mind. Relaxing is letting go. And letting go of my mind is the same thing. Because when I let go of my mind, I'm letting go of my nervous system. My nervous system is my brain. My brain is attached to the nervous system all over the body. What happens? You let go in your brain, the body relaxes. Duh. You see the connection there? And it works vice versa. Anyway, so it's useful to notice these things. Yeah. Anyways, is that enough? Is there more? Come and do some work here if you like. We have physical things, and it's useful. It's not, I would say, it's not necessary in that, you can make progress. But just like Dhammo was saying, but they're not making progress. You see? There's something missing here. And the physical tends to help, all right? And it doesn't hurt you in any way. Seriously, you get an education on your body being, an education on, feeling attention and controlling your mind and your body, your nervous system, balance, moving the center principles, feeling your whole body, three-dimensional awareness, interaction, etc. These things are, very useful, and they might be challenging, especially if you're not used to that, But that's good. It helps you learn how to learn. You get feedback, etc. So it's good for you. It's good for you. Do it. Take the castor oil for Christ's sake. Castor oil. Anyway, it's good. So anyway, anything else there, Mr. Brendan?
Not really, but as you're talking, I'm remembering that every so often I'll see people online saying something about, like in spiritual circles, I want to use consciousness work to transcend the physical or, get past the physical. And I can, perhaps you could speak to that side of it, because that seems fantastical to me. And yeah.
It's not only fantastical, it's not true. Okay? It's idiotic. And I understand our whole culture is steeped in that. Our whole culture, pretty much cultures worldwide have separated mind from body. And I understand why, and we go into that in some of the workshops, okay? But it's not useful, all right? And you say to transcend the physical, why do you poo-poo the physical? You don't even know what it is, all right? Come on. You don't really know what it is. Why are you trying to transcend it? Like when I was a very young man, I lived in a shack, and I told you that Daniel came by with this psychic woman he was dating. She's an interesting woman, and she knew me from an intensive that we did. She was in it and stuff. And anyway, she said to me at the time, I see a man who's trying to transcend himself. He's trying to get, past himself. But he's not allowing himself to be the one he's meant to be. And I thought that was an interesting statement, and it caught me. And really what the road I went down, and that's the EMB was first called the one you're meant to be. But the road I went down, I said, I've given up the social, I'm not social, etc., and I'm working to give up this world, but I don't really know what this world is about. I've never lived a normal life, okay? Trauma as a child, and then, enlightenment. In any case, it's like, and I'm working really hard at this idea of, transcending it all, so to speak. So, this is like a metaphor for the physical. So I said, well, I better first be a social person, and get to know what normal people do. And so I threw myself into that. Ha, 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 ha. In any case, you see, like, and I never, like, say, for example, in the martial world, right? I never did a martial art, and I did many, 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 many martial arts, all of them, pretty much. And I said, I never did a martial art and said, okay, give my opinion. No, this is no good. That's going to be like that. No, I shut the fuck up. Why? Because I didn't know what I was talking about. All right? First, I mastered the art. Then I poo-pooed it. Okay? But first things first. All right? Some arts you can master pretty quick, just a year or two, I won't mention any names. But in any case, and then I would say, once I grasp it, and then I grasp it and go beyond it. But grasp it first. You see? You want to get beyond the physical? What are you getting beyond? You don't even know. See? You're not conscious. You're conscious of an atom? Are you? Huh? See? Are you conscious of every cell in your body? See? Are you conscious? Anyway, probably not. See? So it's silly. You're just, this belief system, that's not useful. That's not useful. Okay? And I wouldn't go down that road. In any case, you can if you want, but I wouldn't go down that road. That's silly. And this whole idea of drugs, no, I'm sorry. People keep talking to me. Sometimes my students, who do a lot of work with me, stuff like that, and they keep talking to me about drugs. Yes, but, and they make arguments, and sometimes they're very intelligent. And they make good arguments, you see. And I keep coming back, no, okay. And they go, but, and okay, no. You see, and well, how can you say that? You say, well, I can say that, well, because it's true, I understand certain drugs, psychedelic drugs, etc., can kick ass. I understand that. Sometimes it's useful to kick some ass with your brain, and so your mind, say, but you don't grasp what's really going on. You're not conscious of anything. What's happening is you're changing your brain, and that can kick some serious ass, right? As you change your brain, and you're going to think differently. You're going to perceive differently. And for a lot of people, that's new. That's new. It's like, whoa, this is like incredible. Okay, but hey, come on. I come from the late 60s and 70s in Berkeley, California, okay? So I know about drugs. In any case, and we did a lot of them back then. Consciousness raising drugs. They did not raise any consciousness. They kicked ass, for sure. All right? Came up with some interesting perspectives, perhaps. But no, it does not raise your consciousness. I'm just telling you, you can't use chemicals to raise your consciousness. You can't stick a needle in your eye and raise your consciousness either. All right? It just doesn't work. It's going to, hurt your eye, but it's not going to raise your consciousness, Anyway, only you can do that. Only you can prevent forest fires. In any case, so how's that? Okay. Well, I recommend the physical. Have I made a case? I hope I've made a case that is useful to you in some way. Yeah.
I guess I could share that from the weekly session that we had today. It's kind of funny that when I started working with you, I had no interest in consciousness work and started mainly in the physical and then moved to the consciousness work, which definitely made a difference for me. And Victor was the opposite. He started only with the consciousness work and has since, moved into appreciating more of the physical work.
Yeah. Yeah. And now if we, again, I'm not advocating being stupid about it, right? Say people who believe in, some kind of, say fighting, or some other thing, and they think strength is the answer, and all they do is get stronger, and that's going to make a difference. Oh heavens, no. No, intelligence is going to skill is going to make a difference. Understanding is going to make a difference, and a physical component has to make a difference. Say but you want to be dumb about it, right? Say, but in any case, so that's my preamble for saying, try not to separate the mind and body, say, because they're not separate. They seriously aren't. And if you don't know what either one is, then shut the fuck up, okay? And find out, all right, first, right? Find out. Work it out first, okay? Experientially, see? And then you can poo-poo it if you like. But first things first, yeah. All right. Okay, we good? All right, well, thank you and good night.